Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome along to Donington Park for the 2020 Championship finale for the F3 Cup Championship. It's been a shortened season, it's been a condensed season, but we've got champions to crown over the course of the 3 races that we'll see throughout the course of today on the Donington Park National Circuit. Weather conditions chilly, autumnal, but the circuit has dried over the course of the previous sessions that have been out on track to this one. So all of the cars will be out there on, I'm guessing, their control slick tyres. There might be the odd little damp patch here and there, but the slick tyre will be the way to go. Now, the championship cannot be wrapped up in this first race of the weekend, but the man who is on the top of the championship ladder, Stefano Lini, did not qualify on pole position. It was his main championship rival that qualified on the pole position. So very quickly, let's just bring you through the grid. Car number 90, Alex Fours, second in the championship, starts from pole position. Only had 2 wins so far this year. Such has been the dominance of Stefano Lini, who will line up alongside him. Row 2 of the grid is Dominic Paul, and alongside him is John Crobit, with row 3 of the grid being Malcolm Scott and former champion, 2016 champion George Line. And then the back of the grid, it's Tony Bishop and Robbie Watts, who was a multiple champion some years ago in the 750 Motor Club Formula 4 Championship and has been a regular in F3 Cup for quite some time. Locked brakes there, and that was Dominic Paul. Now, did he miss his braking point, or was there a problem with the car? Not entirely sure. Now, the cars are going to have 2 formation laps here at Donington Park because they qualified yesterday in very, very wet conditions. It was awful, the weather conditions yesterday, in particular in the afternoon, which delayed some of the races. It postponed some of the races and meant that the timetable for today has changed rather significantly. So second green flag lap taking place. I'm not quite sure what happened to Dominic Paul there, whether he sort of lost a brake and decided not to turn into the Robert chicane, but I think his car is still continuing, so I think it was a mistake on the formation lap. Just going to show that how tricky it is still in some of the areas of the circuit. So you can see some of the dry patches, you can certainly see some of the damper patches, and one of those difficult sections is where Dominic Paul was. You break into the Robert chicane and the old exhibition centre sort of shadows and shades that part of the circuit, so it takes a long time for that heavy braking area into the Robert chicane to dry out. So Alex Fours lies second in the championship standings. He is currently coming into this race on 199 points as a gross score, but you drop your worst championship score of the season. It's only 10 rounds, you drop your worst one. So he's on 182 points net, which means he's dropping actually a 6th place finish, whereas Stefano Lini, who leads the championship, is on 207 points. Net score for him is just 206 because he had a poor first round of the championship at Snetterton in Norfolk, where he non-finished. Picked up just a sole solitary point for pole position or fastest lap, as it would have been at the time, but other than that he's finished either on the top or the second step of the podium in every race so far. So he has had a consistent season, but he's got to remain consistent because you only drop 1 score. If he has a poor score here, then all of a sudden it really swings the championship pendulum back in favour of Alex Fours. And remember, it is those 2 drivers that line up on the front row of the grid. There is the championship leader, number 28, Stefano Lini, at the dark blue car with its day-glow yellow flashes, lining up on the outside of the front row of the grid. He drives for CF Racing because we have a teams championship to think about as well. CF Racing have pretty much already stitched that up, however, but it's a Chris Dittman racing car. Chris himself a former champion in this category back in 2012 that lines up on pole position. And that Chris Dittman racing car is Alex Fours, the burgundy and yellow and black car, but you can tell Alex Fours over Dominic Paul because Alex Fours has got sort of the yellow and the blue flashes to the crash helmet. So final row of the grid just coming into position now. This is a 15-minute race for our first race of 3 here today. The lights are on the gantry, the revs will begin to rise, and we will get our first race of the weekend on the Donington Park National Circuit for F3 Cup underway. Lights go out, and it's not a bad start at all. Initially from Alex Fours. A slightly slower away was Dominic Paul, who was 3rd on the grid, but it's going to be Alex Fours that leads as they head up towards Redgate Corner for the first time. Stefano Lini slots himself through into 2nd position. And already the front 2 are breaking away a little bit from the car that sits there in 3rd position, which I think was George Line, who had a cracking start and may well be up to 3rd from 6th on the grid, down in towards the old hairpin for the first time. You can see all of the cars treading very gingerly, still trying to work out exactly where the grip is, or isn't, as the case may be, in these sort of semi-dry conditions. It's not dry, it's semi-dry, but the leading pair have already romped away in qualifying They were in a class of their own, really, the pair of them. It was really tricky in qualifying, very difficult. It didn't run for the full session either, and the front row of the grid was separated by 0.4 of a second, but they were 8 seconds quicker, yes 8, than anybody else that was there. So if it goes to form, we ought to expect Alex Fours and Stefano Lini to disappear off into the lead and everybody else fight it out for third position. The leading pair in towards the braking area for the Roberts chicane. Alex Fours with his main championship rival and the championship leader Stefano Lini sitting behind. Over the start finish down they'll come. Lini trying to pick up the toe off the race leader, so Alex Fours looking to go a little bit defensive and just cover off the line in towards Redgate corner. Lini dives out from behind and he's looking to try and sweep his way around the outside. Both of them running on wet tyres in the lead of the race, and they are side by side onto Hollywood and Craner Curves, and Stefano Lini has taken up the championship leader, the lead of the race from Alex Fours, and that's exactly what he would have wanted to do in the early stages of this one. In towards the old hairpin, Stefano Lini not quite grabbing the apex, certainly looking as though he's running a lot more rear wing angle on that car than Alex Fours, who sits there in second place, so maybe that might hamper him down the straights possibly. So through McLean's corner, Lini under pressure from the former Monoposto racer Alex Fours. It's his first season in the F3 Cup and he's gone beautifully well. He's claimed a couple of wins, one win coming at Snetterton at the beginning of the season, and he also claimed a win at Snetterton just a few weekends ago as well. He's had, what, 3/3, a 4th and a 6th so far, so it's been a consistent season from Alex Fours. But he has been outscored by the man who leads this race, Stefano Lini, who's been in the F3 Cup Championship with Chris Dittman Racing with CF Racing for a couple of seasons now. Up towards the start of lap number 3. Stefano Lini on the first flying lap, popping in the fastest lap of the race. And just by comparison, in terms of lap times, to give an idea and an indication as to how awful the conditions were yesterday, the pole position time was 1 minute 25.9, almost 1 minute 26 seconds. The first flying lap was 1 minute and 9 seconds. Just going to show how much improvement there's been in conditions compared to qualifying yesterday. So John Crobit, the number 69 car's there in third place. This is the fight for fourth at the moment. George Lyne, the former champion, under pressure from Robbie Watts, who qualified at the back of the grid, which surprised me, Robbie. He's a very quick driver, but clearly was not happy with the conditions yesterday and just wanted to post lap times to maybe at least qualify to get on the back of the grid. There were a few cars that didn't do that many laps at all, and Robbie was one of them, but he is also now under pressure from Dominic Paul, a driver who we've seen and associate more at the wheel of that number 8 car with GT Racing, a former runner-up in the GT Cup Championship some years ago, then moved on to the British GT Championship with Century Motorsport last year, and is now switching to single-seaters, at least for this weekend. So George Lyne, Robbie Watts, and then Dominic Paul, the three of them all together, fighting over what is 4th, 5th and 6th positions. However, for Dominic Paul, I think he might have already possibly picked up a penalty, indication that there's been some sort of transgression possibly for Dominic Paul as he sits there in 6th position. Tony Bishop is 7th and Malcolm Scott at the moment is in 8th place, but this is the best of the battles and Robbie Watts is going to have his work cut out here, the man from Benfleet in Essex. Started in the 750 Motor Club Road Sports category, where he was a champion in that a couple of years on the trot, then moved through to the 750 Motor Club Formula 4 Championship and has been a regular in the MSV Run F3 Cup for a good number of years. Great to see him back racing. His previous race car was destroyed in a fire at his property, and he's worked terribly hard to source another car and build it up again and build up the team again, and his car is going beautifully well, but at the moment it's still bottled up behind the former champion George Lyne. So along the Starkey Straight, George Lyne starting to gap away now as Robbie Watts is coming under increasing pressure from Dominic Paul, who just wasn't quite either close enough or brave enough, not quite sure which one of the two, coming in towards the braking area for the Roberts chicane, but it's just allowing the car of George Lyne, the number 15 car, to escape up the road, and now Dominic Paul jinks out from behind the slipstream of Robbie Watts. It's on the outside line over Redgate corner. He's going to have to sweep his way around the outside if he wants to make it stick. He's giving it a go as well. They are all running on wet tyres actually, which surprises me. I thought there might be a few more that are running on slicks, but all the ones I've seen are all on the wet tyre, and it's worked for Dominic Paul. Round the outside of Robbie Watts, picks up the place, and that now moves him up into 5th position. Robbie Watts drops down into 6th place. Stefano Lini in the lead of the race still, has pulled away from Alex Fours, but for Robbie Watts, can he do anything about at least sticking with Dominic Paul and trying to haul the Raw Motorsport Dallara back up onto terms with him? All of these cars this weekend are running in the Cup class, so it's for cars with engines and ECUs that were all sort of built and raced between 2008 and the end of 2016. They all have to run a certain diameter air restrictor as well on them, and it also allows cars complying with the 2018-2019 Euro Formula Open regulations to come in as well. So all of the cars running in the same class this weekend. There are classes that cater for those older cars as well, but it's all Dallaras that are out there, and the oldest of them is Robbie Watts' car, 2008 car, so his is right at the early days of the Cup class in reality. Now, for the lead of the race, Stefano Lini, who had been getting away, all of a sudden has been reeled in by Alex Fours. Now, last lap through, Alex Fours in second position, the man who qualified on pole, popped in the fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 8.919. That brought him to within a second of Stefano Lini. In towards the braking area for the Roberts chicane. 8 minutes of the race to go, 6 laps about to be completed, and the fight is almost back on again. Another new fastest lap of the race for Alex Fours, so that's another quick lap for the car in second place. 1 minute 8.604 now moves him to within 0.6 of a second of the race leader. The difficulty is that the closer he gets to the coattails of Stefano Lini, then of course the more it's going to affect the aerodynamics of his car. So Lini leading in the Dallara F315 2015 chassis. Alex Fours is in the Dallara F311, so that's the 2011 chassis, built 4 years prior. You can see visually the difference between particularly the nose cone and some of the winglets on the car, as the aerodynamics were affected and developed by Dallara, who rose to dominance in the Formula 3 market back in the early part of the 1990s, really, and then have gone on to dominate it for a very good number of years. This pair are still together. Looks as though through the first sector that again Alex Fours was quicker than Stefano Lini. He went purple. He's also gone purple through the second sector. So this could be another new fastest lap of the race for the car in second place. The third lap on the trot that he has set the fastest lap. Yeah, a 1 minute 7.6 dead for Alex Fours, who is now within 0.3 of a second of Stefano Lini for the lead of the race. This pair fighting for the lead of the championship, fighting for the lead of the race, and Alex Fours is going to go through at Redgate Corner, retake up the lead of the race. Now, Stefano Lini cannot win the championship in this first race, but what he can do is make sure that the rest of the day, if it all goes to plan, is a lot easier. He was a little bit wide there going in towards the old hairpin, so that should let Alex Fours disappear up the road a little bit more. So yeah, already you can see the amount of daylight is appearing. Now the difficulty is that the track is pretty dry in places. They are all, by the look of things, on the control treaded tyre that they are able to run. But of course, as they head around the circuit, then as the circuit ever dries, those wet tyres are going to become overheated as the treads start to move around. So we might see a few more cars towards the end of this race, and it's only, 6 minutes away from the end, disappearing offline to try and cool the tyres down a little bit, and try and improve the grip levels as they bring the temperatures back into the operating window. So over the start-finish line goes Alex Fours, another new fastest lap of the race that time. Even though there was an overtake, he still went quicker. 1 minute 7.363. He's now 1.5 seconds up the road from Stefano Lini. Now, there is an extra point for the fastest lap. There's a point for pole position. Now, that will go the way of Alex Fours. That's already in the bag. There are 35 points for a race win, and there's an extra championship point for the fastest lap as well. So at the moment it is a maximum of 37 points that Alex Fours would pick up for this one, which would do his championship aspirations no harm at all. But for Stefano Lini, he'll be doing the calculated maths and just making sure if he has a consistent weekend, he is in the better position to walk away with the championship at the end of today. But either way, that championship will at least go to race number 2. If not, and it would be great, wouldn't it, if he went to the final race of the season. Robbie Watts still in 6th place, still not that far behind Dominic Paul, but the man from Benfleet in Essex, not far from Southend-on-Sea, still struggling to try and keep up with the former British GT racer. Turning our way through McLean's Corner, a slightly older Dallara F308, a car which is now 12 years old really, 2008 chassis, struggling to keep up with the newer 312 of Dominic Paul. Now, this car here is Tony Bishop. Tony has been very much a regular in this championship and other single-seater championships in the UK as well. So Tony was, for instance, 7th in the championship last year. He was 8th back in 2018 and in 2017. He finished 10th in it in 2016. He was 8th again in it in 2015. He has been very much a fundamental part of the F3 Cup furniture for a good number of years, Tony Bishop, and he is circulating in 7th place with that car there, the red and white number 22 car of Malcolm Scott, not too far behind. But Malcolm Scott will shortly get caught by our race leader, Alex Forbes, who just keeps going quicker and quicker and quicker. Again, the last lap from the race leader was another new fastest lap of the race, 1:06.974 now. So as the circuit dries, the lap times, certainly in the case of Alex Forbes, not in the case of everybody else, but lap times keep coming down and down and down. Through McLean's corner goes our 6th place car, Robbie Watts. So it's good to see Robbie back in the championship. He's lying 3rd in the championship standings, Robbie. He's been, again, another driver that's been consistent all year, but we've not consistently seen him on the podium. Lies 3rd in the championship, but he's only had 2 visits to the podium. He's had 2 thirds, he's had 4 4th places, and he's had a 5th position as Robbie Watts. So consistent, but maybe just needing to find a little bit more pace. But then again, his is the oldest chassis that we've got in the field. Our race leader having to deal with the traffic now. Alex Forbes sweeps his way through and past Tony Bishop's car. So that is both Malcolm Scott and Tony Bishop now in 7th and 8th place, placed a lap down by our race leader, who is just continuing on his merry way and will very shortly be starting what I suspect will be the penultimate lap of the race. Tony Bishop having to weave from one side to the other down the Starkey Straight as Malcolm Scott has begin to close in to try and steal the final place away in towards a braking area for the Robert chicane. Malcolm Scott goes through, so place gain for Malcolm Scott. He's now up into 7th place. Tony Bishop drops down into 8th place and is about to be caught by his teammate from CF Racing, which is Stefano Lini. He should make it fairly easy for Stefano Lini to go through, because Lini is the championship leader, he is a teammate, and he's lapping as well. So out of Redgate corner, Stefano Lini, having dealt with his teammate Tony Bishop, will now try and squeeze his way through and past the car of Malcolm Scott and place that car also a lap down. Should do it, I would have thought, on the approach to the old hairpin. Up the inside, is he going to go? Yeah, Malcolm Scott sees him coming. Sensible driving from the experienced Malcolm Scott. Just lets Stefano go through, places a lap on him, and then the battle can resume again between Malcolm Scott and Tony Bishop, who seems to have just fallen away a little bit more now. So Malcolm Scott, having gained the place, is now sort of cementing himself further in that position. But for Alex Forbes, our race leader, he is on his merry way. There is a minute and a half remaining. Alex Forbes is heading down the Starkey Straight in towards the braking area for the Roberts chicane. It's taking at the moment about 1 minute and 8 seconds to do a lap. Is he going to squeeze another lap out of this one? I think he probably is. Yeah, I think onto the... Oh, it's going to be tight, you know. There's about 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining as he came over the start-finish line. And the lap he's just done is 1 minute and 7, so it should be the penultimate lap, I would have thought. He could afford to ease his pace a little bit because Stefano Lini is now 7 seconds behind, so Alex Forbes could afford to just ease things off. Now, this is the fight for the final podium spot as well that has closed up. John Crobet is under pressure from the former champion, George Line. So George at the wheel of that blue and yellow car that's run by CF Racing, was the champion back in 2016. His highest place championship finish since was last year, where he finished 4th in the overall standings, did George. So 4th last year, 5th the year before, 6th the year before, but the champion the year before that. So George is another driver that's been a regular in this series for a good number of years. Whereas for our race leader, Alex Forbes, he is in his first season in F3 Cup and at the moment is on for just win number 3 of the season, and it will be back-to-back wins as well. 10 seconds to go. Is he going to make it over the start-finish line with a few seconds remaining? I think he is, you know. He could have afforded to have eased off and done one less lap, but Alex Forbes crosses the start-finish line with about 2 seconds remaining. So on to the last lap of the race goes Alex Forbes. He is on lap number 14. He qualified on pole position. He has set the fastest lap of the race so far and is on for the win, so a maximum of 37 championship points is what he is looking to accumulate. Stefano Lini finishing in 2nd place would score 29, so it is going to close the championship battle up as we head into our 2nd of 3 races here today at Donington Park. George Line has also been able to, by the look of things, squeeze his way through and ahead of Richard Crowbit. So that's a change now for George Line. He now moves up into third place in the final podium spot. That will please George, because podiums have been, well, when we've seen him, easy to come by. He's had a win, he's had 2/3, but George has not done the full season with us, so that's why he lies down in 7th in the championship standings. But for Alex Fours, he heads in towards the Robert chicane for the final time. He flicks right, he flicks left, accelerates towards the checkered flag. The clock has ticked to 0. It's a win in the first of our F3 Cup Championship races here at Donington Park on the national circuit. It is the 3rd win of the season for Alex Fours, and it's a back-to-back win as well, because he won the previous race that took place at Snetterton in Norfolk a couple of weekends ago. Stefano Lini, his main championship rival, finishes in 2nd place, but that does close the championship gap up a little bit. There goes Malcolm Scott over the start-finish line. He'll be classified in 7th off the lead lap of the race. But who's going to finish in 3rd? It is just going to be George Line, who has just done enough in the closing stages of the race to keep at bay the aspirations of Richard Crowbit, who got unpicked a little bit, didn't he, from the former champion with a couple of laps to go. So Richard Crowbit finishes in 3rd place behind George, finishes in 4th place behind George Line, who was there in 3rd place. Dominic Paul, who qualified 3rd, finishes 5th, so he'll be disappointed with that, and I think there's just one more car to take the checkered flag, which would be Robbie Watts. But for Alex Fours, he's done it. He's done exactly what he needed to do this weekend, and that is try and win the race, try and get maximum points from it, and in doing so has closed up the championship gap that exists between himself and Stefano Lini. Confirmation of the results then: Alex Fours claims the win, Stefano Lini in 2nd place, and George Line, the former champion, in 3rd. 4th place goes the way of John Crowbit. 5th place is Dominic Paul, and Robbie Watts was in 6th place, with Malcolm Scott and Tony Bishop completing the finishers. So that's our first of 3 races done here at Donington Park on the national circuit for the F3 Cup. But don't forget, we have got 2 further races to come, and both of those races will be not over 15 minutes as we've just seen. The next 2 races will be held over 20 minutes here at Donington Park. So that's all for the moment. Join us here later on today. Until then, it's goodbye.